My next guest is the deputy editor of the Chicago Reader. Who reads the Reader here? Anyone? Well, then you'll be into this. As I said, deputy editor of the Chicago Reader. I have somehow talked her into joining us here tonight. Will you please welcome my guest to the stage, Robin Amers. Track, but they didn't do that for me. You're a bit of a celeb.
Apparently, thank you.
Deputy editor.
Yes, that's me.
You got a badge for that, or?
I have a lanyard in my purse. Do I need to show some ID?
Nah, you're cool.
It says.
Nah, you're cool. You're
then
alright.
there would be like 3 pictures of me like that. Yeah.
That's you.
That's me.
So you're legit.
Yeah.
If you're on the tube, hey, you made it. So would you classify yourself as a journalist?
Yes, I would. Although it took me a long time to get there. I didn't think of myself as a journalist when I was younger. It kind of took me growing up and doing the work for a long time to be like, oh yeah, I guess I am a journalist.
Oh, the work.
Yeah.
See, that's why I'm not either. Did you have to like go to school for that?
I did actually go to school for journalism.
Oh, shit.
But I went to school for journalism like after being a journalist for 10 years, so that confused a lot of people, including my parents. But I went to learn specifically how to be an investigative reporter, so it was worth it because that's now what I do for the Reader.
Is it?
Yes.
Because I thought you were deputy editor.
Yeah, so do you want me to explain what that means? Is that...
Well, just for the audience, so they know. But to preface, you worked at WBEZ.
I did, yes.
Before you got to be doing what you're doing at the Reader. So
Yes,
was it
that's
WBEZ school and then this?
Yes, that's correct.
So please go on. Do tell us, what does the deputy editor do?
So basically, I'm second on the masthead. Our editor is Jake Malooly, and he runs the paper, and I report to Jake. My responsibilities also include like basically editing all of our news coverage. Sorry, I'm not used to having my audience be like in front of me. I'm used to being on the radio where I don't see anybody. So I'm just gonna look at you.
Yeah, just look at me. You know what I do? Look between them or over their heads.
Okay.
I never make eye contact. Do I? Who am I looking at? Not you.
All right, so I'm going to do a second take. So I edit all of our news content, and I also coordinate all of our investigations. So a lot of our reporters, who I think are much beloved, Ben Joravsky, Mike Miner, Steve Bogira, Maya Duke Masava, all of those guys report to me, and I edit all of them. So that's really fun. I get to talk to Ben on the phone all the time, and we talk about politics on the phone when I'm not like editing his columns.
For those out of town, Ben Joravsky is a little bit of the godfather of gadfly journalism. He's truth to power, Ben Joravsky. Please go on.
And I also
You're his boss.
Technically, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I also coordinate, and he's my work dad, is what I call him. So I also coordinate all of our investigations. So if you pick up the paper and you go, oh shit, I didn't know that was happening in the police department or in the mayor's office or whatever, that's usually something that I've had my fingers in. Oops.
Well, dibs. No, it's too late. Fell off. That's ours. So that brings us to civil forfeiture. What a great example, because your ring fell off and now it fell onto my stage. I get to take it.
Yeah.
So please explain, because this article that is about, I do not have the title of it because I wrote all over the title page.
It's called Inside the Chicago Police Department's Secret Budget.
Secret budget.
Yes.
So that sounds fishy.
Yeah, that was how it struck us too when we first found out about it.
So let's just start with civil forfeiture, because I do my research, but just for the audience's benefit, what exactly is that?
So civil forfeiture is a practice that's used not just by CPD but by police departments around the country, and they started doing this arguably to try and get at the money trail funding like the illegal drug trade in America, right? So the idea was, if in the course of investigating the drug trade, police came across, say, like a drug house full of money, or they pulled over a car and found large quantities of drugs and money, they would be able to seize that money, seize those assets, and keep them as a way of like taking the money away from the drug dealers. So that sounds pretty good, I think, to most people.
I was gonna say, I mean,
Right.
This looks like a lot of writing about something that the police needs to do. I mean, what should we just say? Oh, you take that money. and
Right,
those
so
drugs and
here's
take
the
car.
problem
Oh,
with the
okay, good.
situation.
I was waiting for that.
So you'll notice that this practice is called civil forfeiture, not criminal forfeiture. And the reason it's called civil forfeiture is because you don't actually have to be convicted of a crime for them to keep your money or keep your assets. So what we found, and we're not the first people to find this, the Washington Post and the New Yorker both did really great investigations in the past couple years into this practice nationally. What we wanted to do was investigate the process in Chicago because nobody had ever looked into the process in Chicago before. But in Illinois and many other states, which also have similar laws, they can pull you over, they can search your car with probable cause. If they find even a small amount of drugs on you, or allege that they've found a small amount of drugs on you, they can seize your car and move to keep it, even if you subsequently go to court and a judge throws out the charges against you and says, these charges have no merit, like there's not even enough here for me to send this on to trial. The police and the state's attorney's office can say, okay, cool, we're still gonna keep your money, we're still gonna keep your car.
So even if you're not convicted of what
Yes.
they charged you for originally,
Yes.
they still get to keep your stuff.
Yes, and you have to go through a very lengthy, difficult bureaucratic process to try and argue to get your stuff back. And the burden of proof is very, very high on you to say, I mean, it's almost like you have to prove the negative. You have to prove, like, I didn't do anything illegal, which is technically the opposite of the way the legal system normally works, where you're
I was gonna
innocent
say,
until proven guilty.
It's I before G, right? Innocent before guilty.
Except after C for
convicted.
civil forfeiture.
Right, or civil forfeiture. I like that better. We're riffing here. It's improv, comedy. Hey. So, what? You rolled up to CPD headquarters a couple weeks ago. You said,
Yes,
"Hey, can you give me
exactly.
everything on civil forfeiture?" And they're like, "Ah, yeah, there you go."
Yeah, so
Check
we,
it out.
oh my God.
Right.
So the way this came about was we worked with 3 independent journalists, actually I would say 1 independent journalist and 2 sort of citizen journalists from the Lucy Parsons Lab, which is a nonprofit that's devoted to transparency in government, and had previously looked into the way that CPD had been acquiring all of this controversial surveillance equipment to spy on us as part of their routine day-to-day operations.
Well, not us.
Oh, yeah.
What? What? Me?
No, it's true. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But
Did they follow you here?
well, I mean, it's true if you're commenting on like the whiteness of the audience and like the way that we are not targeted by police, like that is true. Like we are not the ones who are targeted by police.
No.
That's part of the problem. However, some of the equipment that we found CPD has been acquiring with the secret slush fund does indiscriminately surveil many people, regardless of race, income, or whether or not you've been accused of doing anything. For example, we found that they're buying these devices called cell site simulators, which mimic cell phone towers. And so if you are anywhere within the radius of these devices, they can scoop up like tens of thousands of cell phones at a time, get like all of the metadata from your cell phones.
Well, all this seems
So-
pretty legit. I gotta say, they get this money. It was gonna go to drug dealers in the first place, so they spend it on surveilling the drug dealers, or us, to, make sure
Yeah.
everything's okay.
Or like 72-year-old grandmothers who haven't done anything illegal, whose son like borrowed their car. And
That's
then,
right. Maybe you
Yeah.
should tell us about Willie Mae Swansea.
Yeah, so she is the woman that we profiled in the story. She's a 72-year-old grandmother who suffers from congenital heart failure. And
Oh, boo-hoo.
I know, right? It's like, ooh, who wants to hear about that?
Who doesn't?
So her son borrowed her car without asking, and then was pulled over and charged with heroin possession. And even though she is the owner of the car, her name is on the title, and she has never been accused of doing anything illegal, the police moved to keep her car because he was driving it while they pulled him over and charged him with a crime.
And of course, once the judge realized this, or the jury realized
No
this.
jury, just a judge. So she had
So
to.
as soon as the judge realized this, he said, "This, you weren't trafficking heroin. You're 72 years old.
Have your car
Here's
back.
your car back.
No,
It's a
that's
PT
not what
Cruiser.
happened.
It's worth $1,400. We don't want this."
This is like not what happened at all. She had to go to court 9 different times, and each time she went to court, the judge would say, "Well, has your son's criminal trial been resolved yet?" And she would say, "No, it has. It's still pending.
Still pending. It hasn't
and
been decided
they would say, "Come back in 2 months, and we'll check in with you then."
And that's by law.
Yeah,
That's not like up to
they
the
are
discretion
allowed
of
to
the
do that.
judge.
Yes, they are allowed to do that. But one of the things I feel like I've come to think about a lot since I started this job is just because it's legal doesn't mean it's necessarily okay. We did it. I know, right?
Elaborate on
Speaking
that.
of voting and like things we might want to change. So we did another investigation this year that I also edited. That came out just about a month ago into the felony murder rule, which says that if, let's say, you and I rob a convenience store together, hypothetically speaking, and during the course of the robbery, you shoot and kill the clerk in the convenience store, hypothetically speaking, I can be charged with felony murder because allegedly I have partaken in a felony that led to somebody being killed.
You're an accomplice.
Yes, exactly. So we looked at a small subset of these cases where, let's say you and I rob a convenience store again, police officer comes and as he's trying to stop this robbery, he shoots and kills you, okay?
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically speaking, I can be charged with your murder even though a police officer is the one who pulled the trigger.
And that's legal?
It is legal. It is legal in Illinois. It is legal in many other places. And we found 10 cases in the last 5 years where that's happened in Chicago alone. So again, the question is, this is legal, but the question I pose to people reading the story is, do you think this should be legal? Are you cool with this? Do you want this to be a law on the books? The same thing with civil forfeiture. In Illinois, we have civil forfeiture, but actually the day that the story came out, California moved to reform its civil forfeiture laws. So now they don't have civil forfeiture anymore, they just have criminal forfeiture. You have to be convicted of a crime in order for them to keep your stuff.
So there's the delineation, what you mentioned before, between
Right.
criminal and civil forfeiture.
Right.
Civil forfeiture means you've been convicted of nothing. We
Yes.
can prove nothing. It's still up in the air, but we're going to keep your stuff and
It's
sell
usually
it.
the police officer's word is good enough. They say, like, we suspect that this money is connected to the drug trade. That's actually usually enough.
So my next question would be, once the police department gets it, it is the police department,
Yes,
right?
that's correct.
They get this money.
They seize
What
it.
happens to that?
So they seize the money, and then they have to go through a legal process with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office in Chicago's case, where it's actually the Cook County State's Attorney's Office that essentially prosecutes the case and moves to keep the money. And so they also get a cut. So CPD gets 65%, and the State's Attorney's Office gets 25%.
Well, that seems...
So speaking of
honest
voting, you know
people.
who else is up for re-election is Anita Alvarez. Like, except that she lost the primary.
I've
so.
heard of her. For those in from out of
Yeah.
town, Anita Alvarez is our current Cook County State Attorney, and yeah, we'll see. She's on her way out, probably.
Yeah, I misspoke. She lost the primary.
Right, I read
So
the
now
paper.
yeah.
I know that. But
So it's a joint effort, and then the Illinois State Police gets like 10% of the money.
Illinois State Police too.
Yeah.
So that seems all very legit. Saw people prosecuting people for something they haven't done, taking their assets and splitting it amongst themselves. I mean,
Totally. Yeah, and you asked like how this investigation started. Freddie Martinez, one of the reporters I worked with, he was looking into the surveillance equipment. He got this FOIA document. He saw in the document that reference to this 1505 account. He was like, "What's this 1505 account?" Because nobody knew what CPD was up to. It wasn't transparent at all. And they basically spent 6 months working with other citizen journalists through the website Muckrock to crowdsource their FOIA process. So if I, as a journalist, submit like 20 different Freedom of Information Act requests to CPD at once, they're going to...
Oh, FOIA is an acronym.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
FOIA is an acronym. It
Great,
stands for
got it.
Freedom of Information Act, which means by law I'm allowed to go to CPD and say,
Please give me
like,
these documents.
please give me all documents you have related to your secret budget. And they're going to come back and say, no.
No.
Like,
Absolutely
that's
not.
overly burdensome because of reasons we don't have to specify. But if I say, hey, can everybody in the audience please submit one FOIA request, it's actually much harder for them to say no to that because it's easy for them to say yes to you, and yes to you, and yes to you, and yes to you, than it is for them to say yes to me submitting like 100 requests. So we actually worked with people and had them submit FOIA requests on our behalf. And ultimately we got 622 individual documents, each one of which detailed a separate purchase that CPD had made.
And these
with this
documents,
money.
they of course said this is all very legitimate, it's very open, now that you have these documents, we don't care.
The documents literally say, don't tell anybody about this, this is a secret. They're all letters, like purchase orders from one cop to another cop that says, like, dear Commander, I would like to spend $400,000 on the cell site simulator so that we can spy on people. Like, per the rules, this is a secret, don't tell anybody.
And to be clear, some of this money, which amasses to, I mean, what, since 2010, it's in here somewhere.
So
we have graph charts. I will leave this up front by the door so you can parse through all this stuff. There's a lot
tens of millions of dollars.
Tens of millions of dollars. Some of it goes to cars. Some of it goes to cell phones that undercover police officers need to use. Some very legitimate things that they use to fight crime.
I would take issue with the word legitimate.
Okay, go on.
Well, the thing that's really interesting to me about this, again, just in the context of voting, is that the city council has oversight over the public budget, right? The mayor proposes the budget, the city council votes on it, we have separation of powers, it's in the Constitution.
What is that? No, I'm kidding.
But this is a secret, like nobody has to approve this, it's all internal to the police department. Like, they decide what they spend the money on, the city council has nothing to do with it. They're already getting $1.4 billion annually from the city. Like, you'd think that maybe that would be enough for them to
They actually
run their
get the
department?
largest cut of city money of any
Yes.
city institution.
Yes.
But my point is, once the city council found out that all this money was being collected behind their backs, they said, oh, we're gonna stop this, right? I mean, this is terrible and we shouldn't do this anymore, right? Right, Robin?
It's like you're talking
of course
about a
they
different
did.
city altogether.
Oh, like Gotham or something.
Yeah. No, the city council's reaction actually, like, I went through this process and there were a lot of things that surprised me, but the thing that has actually surprised me the most is the reaction from the city council, which has been mostly not like, this is a questionable process that maybe we should consider reforming, because there are many, many low-income people who are devastated by having their assets taken when they haven't been convicted of a crime. Instead, Alderman Ed Burke got on the floor of the city council, waving the story around, and essentially said, there's money that we don't control. Like, no, like, we want to control this money.
WTF.
And, you know, I certainly, and the mayor's budget director, Alex Holt, also said something similar, which is like, we want to, like, get this stuff under control. And, you know, they should, because one of the big problems here is lack of oversight.
Right, I mean,
But-
you can go to budget hearings in city council. I
Right.
mean, I've been.
They're transparent.
Boring, but you know, the point is, it is pretty transparent, and you can go and see we're going to give this much to this person. And with civil forfeiture, you just do not have that oversight from anyone.
No, so, you know, reformers argue that the city should get this process under control as one means of reform. I will be interested to see if anybody on the state level also pushes to end civil forfeiture the way they have in New Mexico and California and other states.
Well, we love Ed Burke here at Good Evening. Oh, Eddie. Eddie was a police officer for 3 years before he was an alderman, actually.
Yes, he's a very strong advocate for police.
He was very surprised to learn about all this. I'm sure he had no idea.
So much so, and actually we wrote about this today, that the thing he wants to do with the money that he now knows about is buy this like special quick clotting gauze for police officers to carry around to like clot their wounds if they get shot in the line of duty.
One of many bills he's trying to push through, you know, Ed,
But
he's
he
trying to
doesn't
push
care about giving it to
through
people.
the Blue Lives Matter bill. That would make it a hate crime to attack any police officer or former police officer in the city of Chicago. City of Chicago. Hey, we gotta wrap it up. But I would like to say, how's it going at the Reader? Everything good?
Yeah, totally, no problems at all. Having like a protracted union negotiations or anything like that.
Well, that sounds simple enough.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you get a pay raise every year because that's how newspapers work in this country.
The staff of the Reader has not had a raise in 10 years, actually.
Oh, is that all?
One of the things that the union is currently negotiating with the owners of the paper.
I bumped into you at the Save the Reader rally that was held down at Merchandise Mart just the other day. I would encourage everyone everyone to like Save the Reader on Facebook. It is its own Facebook page. And as I mentioned earlier, does anyone here read the Reader? Will any of you please, for me as a personal favor, like the Save the Reader Facebook page? I'm sorry, I wasn't quite as loud. Because I gotta say, with all this investigative reporting that you're doing, I mean, this is how they get FOIA requests. It's pretty convoluted, and I will leave this article up by the front door. But Robin, I really want to thank you for being here. Is there anything else that you would like to leave our audience members with before we get to drink
Well,
an
after
old
that very
Milwaukee?
convincing sales pitch from Ike, I think everybody should go out and vote.
Yes. All right. I'll register. Well, we will keep track at about what is going on at the Reader. We will all support you and the important work that you're doing. I really want to thank you for enlightening me on everything that's going on with civil forfeiture in the city of Chicago. Guys, will you please give it up for Deputy Editor of the Chicago Reader, Robin Amers. We're going to reset things again for song number 2 from Gramps the Vamp. This is real.